They thought I was losing my mind. They whispered it in corners at family dinners when they thought I couldn't hear. Grandpa forgets things. He's confused. He's dangerous to himself. Every word cut like glass because it wasn't strangers saying it. It was my own grandchildren. The same kids whose diapers I once changed, whose bicycles I fixed, whose school plays I clapped through until my hands ached. Now they were building a case to put me away. It started with little things. My grandson, Jason, moved my keys from the hallway hook to the kitchen counter, then asked me later, "Grandpa, don't you remember where you left them?" My granddaughter, Melissa, unplugged the coffee maker after I went to bed, so the next morning I'd curse at a cold pot, wondering if I'd forgotten to turn it on. "He's slipping," she'd say sweetly to her mother. It's sad to watch. Sad. Right. But the worst came one Thursday evening when I overheard them on the porch. The air smelled of wet pine after rain, the kind of smell that always reminded me of nights in the field when every sense had to stay sharp. I'd gone outside for air and the old boards under my boots made no sound. That's when I heard Jason's voice, low but eager. "If we file for guardianship, we can control everything. The house, the pension, the accounts. He won't even know what's happening. We'll just say he's losing it." Melissa laughed, that fake tinkling sound she must have practiced in front of a mirror. "Grandpa doesn't stand a chance. The judge will believe us. Everyone already thinks he's old. Old. That's what I'd been reduced to in their eyes. Not a man. Not a soldier. Not the one who carried this family on his back for decades. Just a doddering old fool who misplaces his glasses." I stood in the shadows of the porch, every nerve in my body tight, listening as my own blood plotted to erase me. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. Inside, the house told its own story. The wedding photo of their grandmother and me on the mantel frame cracked from the years, but her smile still strong. The flag folded in a wooden case above the fireplace, the one I'd carried home from friends who never came back. The leather recliner, torn at the armrest, where I'd rocked Jason to sleep when he was a baby, his tiny fingers clutching mine like I was the only safe thing in the world. And now, that same boy wanted me declared incompetent. Melissa came inside first. She saw me standing by the window, hands folded behind my back, silent. She froze, guilt flashing across her face for half a second before the mask returned. "Grandpa, did you take your pills tonight?" Her tone was syrupy, careful. I turned, my voice steady, clipped. "I don't need children counting my pills." Her smile didn't falter. "We're just worried about you." Worried. If betrayal had a perfume, that would be it. Sweet on the outside, poison underneath. That night, I sat in my darkened bedroom, listening to the grandfather clock tick, each second landing like a hammer. They thought they were clever, staging little incidents, planting doubt in everyone's mind. But they'd forgotten one thing. I wasn't just some old man. I was Bob Selvers, veteran, instructor, a man who had trained soldiers to survive ambushes and detect lies before the liar opened his mouth. The irony made me smile in the dark. They thought they were setting a trap for me. In truth, they were showing me their hand, step by step, and I was patient enough to let them play. The first move came on Sunday. My daughter invited herself over, her voice too cheerful on the phone. "Dad, Jason and Melissa are concerned. Maybe we should talk about next steps." Next steps. I could practically hear the papers shuffling already, power of attorney forms, medical reports, lies printed in neat black ink. When she arrived, Jason and Melissa flanked her like lawyers preparing for trial. Jason carried a folder under his arm. Melissa had her phone out, ready to record if I forgot something. They sat me down in my own living room, my house, my chair, and spoke to me like I was a patient. "Dad, we're only thinking of your safety," my daughter began, her eyes sliding away from mine. "You've been forgetful lately. Melissa said you almost left the stove on." Melissa chimed in, eager. "And yesterday, you repeated the same story twice." "Grandpa, it's okay. We just want to help." Help. I let the silence stretch, watching their faces. Jason tapped the folder nervously, as if it might spring open and do the dirty work itself. Finally, I leaned forward. My voice was low, sharp, the way I used to speak to recruits who thought the rules didn't apply to them. You think I don't see what you're doing? You think I don't know when I'm being cornered? Their smiles cracked just for a heartbeat. Jason recovered first. Grandpa, you're imagining things. That's exactly what we're worried about. I smiled then, but it wasn't warm. It was cold. Calculated. Good. Keep worrying. You'll learn soon enough that the old man isn't the one who should be afraid. They shifted in their seats, uncertain. Melissa fidgeted with her phone. My daughter tried to smooth it over with words about family unity. But I'd already seen what was written on their faces: greed, calculation, fear of missing out on what I'd built. When they left, the porch light caught their silhouettes, hunched together in urgent whispers. The sound carried in the night air, mixed with the smell of damp earth. They thought they had time. They thought I'd crumble before their plan. But as I locked the door behind them, a calmness settled in my chest. I'd spent my life teaching men how to outthink, outwait, and outmaneuver enemies far more dangerous than a greedy grandson and a scheming granddaughter. And if my own blood wanted a war, I'd give them one. The morning after their little intervention, I woke before sunrise. Old habits. The air was cool, sharp, with that faint metallic smell you only notice at dawn. I stood at the window, coffee in hand, watching the first light crawl over the rooftops of Dallas. People think soldiers wake early because of discipline. Truth is, it's the silence. The hours before the world stirs are when you see everything clearly. And clarity was what I needed. Jason and Melissa thought they'd cornered me. In truth, they'd just told me exactly where to strike. Guardianship, power of attorney, financial control, those were their weapons. Fine. I'd take those weapons, turn them back on them, and watch their confidence rot. First step, information. Always. A war isn't one with bullets. It's one with intelligence. I started small. Melissa left her laptop bag on my dining room chair after Sunday's performance. Careless. She thought old men don't notice details. Wrong. While she was in the bathroom, I had glanced inside. A glimpse of an email printout, highlighted lines, legal jargon about capacity evaluations. She was already in touch with a lawyer. I didn't need the name yet, but I'd get it. Later that week, I paid a visit to an old friend, Frank Morales. He'd served with me back in the day, but now he worked private security downtown. His office smelled of gun oil and black coffee. We shook hands, the kind of grip that carries 30 years of memory. "What's this about, Bob?" he asked, eyes narrowing. "My grandkids are trying to bury me before I'm in the ground." He didn't laugh. He knew I wasn't joking. "What do you need?" "Paperwork, surveillance, and silence." Frank slid a notepad across the desk. "Names?" I wrote Jason and Melissa, each letter carved deep into the page. "They think I'm slipping. I want everything that proves I'm sharper than they'll ever be. Phones, accounts, where they spend, who they talk to. And I need eyes inside whatever lawyer's office they're running to." Frank grinned, wolfish. "That's dirty work." "No," I corrected. "It's justice." That night, the house felt different. I turned off every light and sat in the dark listening. Around 10, I heard it, Jason's voice outside, low and urgent. I moved to the window, careful not to stir the curtain. His phone screen glowed against the dark like a beacon. Yeah, the old man's worse than we thought. He actually accused us outright. We need that evaluation soon. Otherwise, he'll drag this out forever. Melissa's laugh followed, sharp and ugly. "Don't worry. Judges eat this stuff up. By the time he knows what hit him, we'll have the house deed in our hands." I pressed my hand against the wall, the paint cooled beneath my palm. My own blood was conspiring under my roof. But instead of anger, I felt focus. Their arrogance was a gift. Every careless word was rope I'd used to hang them. The next day, I set my own trap. Jason had been so eager to play detective with my forgetfulness that I gave him a show. I left the oven on just long enough for the smoke alarm to chirp, then killed it. Pretended to be confused when Melissa rushed in. She snapped a photo of the smoke curling from the pan, eyes glittering with triumph. Perfect. Every piece of fake evidence they gathered would become my proof of their manipulation. Meanwhile, I began my own record. A small black notebook I kept in my jacket pocket. Times, dates, every word they said. The smell of Jason's cologne when he leaned over me with false concern. The sound of Melissa's nails tapping against her phone while she documented my confusion. Every detail mattered. I wasn't just fighting back, I was building a case. One night, Melissa tried a new trick. She swapped my medication bottles, slipped vitamins where my heart pills should have been. Thought I wouldn't notice. She didn't know I'd been counting them daily for years. I let her think she succeeded, then scribbled every detail into the notebook. The next morning, I asked her to hand me my pills in front of my daughter. She smiled, proud of herself, not realizing she was handing me evidence of attempted sabotage. By the end of the week, Frank called. "Bob, you're gonna like this. Your grandson's drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed. Missed car payments. He needs your house like a man in the desert needs water." "And Melissa?" I asked. "Her law internship ended 3 months ago. She's not working, but she's been spending like a senator's wife. Designer bags, dinners at places and I couldn't afford if we pooled our pensions. My bet? They're desperate." I closed my eyes, breathing in slow. Desperation makes people sloppy, and sloppy people are easy to destroy. That night, I sat in the living room. The house smelled faintly of lemon polish Melissa had cleaned earlier, trying to look helpful. Jason hovered in the doorway, folder in hand. "Grandpa, we just want what's best for you," he began, feigning sympathy. I leaned forward in my chair, my voice cutting like glass. "Careful, boy. Sometimes when you dig a grave, you fall in first." The color drained from his face. For the first time, I saw doubt in his eyes. And that was just the beginning. They were tightening the noose, but they didn't know I was the one holding the rope. By Monday morning, I already had Frank's first dossier printed in neat folders. I read it at my kitchen table with the blinds half closed, the smell of burnt toast still hanging in the air. Jason's debts were worse than I'd imagined. 3 credit cards maxed, a payday loan, even a bounce check to a gym. Melissa, for all her smug talk about law school, hadn't been employed in months. She was living on borrowed plastic and borrowed time. And here they were, scheming to prove I was unfit. I almost laughed into my cold coffee. They wanted to brand me incompetent? Fine. I'd play their game. The opportunity came that evening. Melissa barged in with her phone out, pretending to help me balance my checkbook. "Grandpa, you've written the same number twice," she said, her voice dripping pity. Jason stood behind her, folder under his arm, the smell of his cheap cologne clogging the air. "Guess we should start keeping track of this," he muttered. I leaned over the checkbook, squinting like I couldn't focus. "You're right," I said softly. "I've been so tired lately." I let the words hang in the room like smoke. Their smiles bloomed instantly, 2 predators smelling blood. Melissa tapped at her phone, probably recording. Jason scribbled something into his folder. They thought they had another nail for the coffin. What they didn't know was that I'd written those mistakes myself, deliberate duplicates, staged slips of the pen. And the little camera I'd hidden in the bookshelf, bought quietly through Frank, captured their glee as they circled me like vultures. I watched them leave, whispering on the porch, Melissa's heels clicking on the wooden boards. Their silhouettes stretched across the driveway in the yellow porch light, bent forward, eager, plodding. Inside, I sat in silence, the grandfather clock ticking steady. The old walls held their whispers like secrets, but I already had the truth recorded. The next strike was small, but effective. I invited them over for dinner on Wednesday. The house smelled of beef stew and rosemary, hearty, comforting. They arrived late, Jason's shirt half-tucked, Melissa on her phone. I poured wine, raised a glass. "To family," I said. They clinked half-heartedly, already impatient. Halfway through dinner, I forgot their names. I looked Jason in the eye and called him Daniel. Turned to Melissa and said, "Pass the salt, Rebecca." They froze. Melissa's fork hovered midair. Jason's jaw tightened. "Grandpa, it's Jason," he corrected. I blinked, feigned confusion, then smiled faintly. "Of course. Just tired, I suppose." Melissa's phone appeared instantly under the table. I caught the glow of her screen. She was writing it down, cataloging my symptoms. Perfect. I spooned another mouthful of stew, calm, deliberate. Every note they took was another piece of their undoing, because I knew what came next. They'd take these staged episodes to a lawyer, maybe even a judge. They'd talk about my memory lapses, my slips, their concern for my safety. But I'd have something they didn't, the recordings showing them staging, whispering, celebrating my supposed decline. Evidence of manipulation. A house of cards ready to collapse with one push. After dinner, Jason wandered into my study while Melissa distracted me with forced laughter in the kitchen. I let him. In fact, I'd left something waiting in the desk drawer, a will, clumsily typed, naming him sole heir. The paper was unnotarized, unbound, sloppy. Bait. Through the crack of the door, I saw him find it. His face flushed, his hands trembling as he stuffed it into his folder. He thought he'd discovered treasure. He thought he'd beaten me. Later, when the time was right, I'd reveal that very document in front of the right eyes, proof that he'd stolen from me, tampered with supposed legal papers. That night, as their car taillights faded down the street, I stood in my quiet house. The stew pot still simmered faintly, the smell of rosemary hanging heavy in the air. My wife's portrait watched from the mantel, her eyes stern but steady. "They think I'm weak," I whispered to her. "They've mistaken patience for weakness." The clock struck 11. Each chime echoed like a warning bell. The next morning, Frank called. "Bob, you should know Melissa reached out to an elder law attorney. Guy named Crane. Real shark. But he doesn't come cheap." "Good," I said. My voice was calm. Cold. Let them spend money they don't have. Let them dig deeper. I closed my notebook with a snap. Step by step, they were building the gallows. They just didn't realize who'd be hanging there. By the time Friday rolled around, I was ready to tighten the vise. Jason and Melissa thought they had me stumbling, forgetting names, leaving the stove on. They didn't realize every slip was scripted, every mistake rehearsed. They were gathering evidence for a case that didn't exist, except in the trap I was building for them. That morning, I brewed coffee strong enough to peel paint, the kitchen filling with the bitter, rich smell. My daughter, their mother, was coming over. They'd invited her behind my back, no doubt eager to present their concerns. I set the stage carefully, papers scattered across the coffee table, a half-finished crossword with easy blanks left open, even my reading glasses upside down. Enough to make them think I was slipping. The doorbell rang. Melissa swept in first, perfume sharp and cloying, Jason right behind with that damn folder under his arm again. My daughter trailed them, frowning, suspicious. "Dad, we just want to talk. Don't get upset." I sat in my armchair, the morning sun slanting through half-closed blinds, striping the floor with gold. "Talk then," I said flatly. Jason jumped in. "Mom, you've seen it. Grandpa's forgetting names. He left the oven on. We caught him repeating stories. It's not safe anymore." His voice had that fake gravitas of a man trying to sound professional but sweating underneath. Melissa added, "We've spoken to an attorney. Just preliminary, of course. But we need to consider guardianship before something serious happens." My daughter's face twisted, torn between worry and shame. She looked at me. "Dad, is this true?" "Perfect." The silence stretched, heavy as smoke. I let my hand tremble as I reached for the crossword on the table. For letters. Tree with acorns. I can't seem to recall. My voice was small, frail. Jason leaned forward, triumphant. "Oak. It's oak, Grandpa. See? This is what we're talking about." I looked down, muttering, "Oak, of course." Then I let my voice drop cold. "And do you know what else I remember, Jason?" His smile faltered. I reached to the bookshelf, slid out a black notebook. My hand was steady now, the soldier's grip. I flipped it open, pages covered in neat handwriting. March 14th. Jason and Melissa whispering on the porch. Quote, "If we file for guardianship, we can control everything. The house, the pension, the accounts." Melissa stiffened, color draining from her face. I continued, voice sharp as broken glass. March 16th. Melissa swaps pill bottles. Replaces heart medication with vitamins. Laughs about how long before anyone notices. Quote, "Judges eat this stuff up." My daughter's eyes widened. What? And March 18th. I snapped the notebook shut. Jason discovers a fake will in my desk and pockets it. Evidence of tampering with documents. Evidence that will look very good in front of a real judge. Jason's folder slipped from his grip, papers spilling across the rug like snow. Melissa's phone clattered to the floor. My daughter turned on them, her face flushed with rage. What the hell is this? Dad's confused. Melissa blurted, desperation creeping in. He's making things up. I reached into the drawer of the coffee table and pulled out a flash drive, tossing it onto the pile of spilled papers. The little black plastic gleamed under the sunlight. Not my words. Recordings. Video. Every smile you faked while plotting against me. Every word you whispered when you thought I couldn't hear. The silence was suffocating. Only the ticking of the grandfather clock filled the room. My daughter's hands shook as she picked up the flash drive. She stared at her children, betrayal carved into her face. Jason opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Melissa whispered, "Grandpa, please." I stood, the floorboards creaking beneath my boots. My voice cut the air, low and merciless. You wanted to declare me incompetent. You wanted to strip me of everything I earned. But you forgot one thing. Their eyes locked on me wide, frightened. I taught soldiers how to see through lies before you were even born. My daughter backed toward the door, clutching the flash drive like it burned her hand. Jason bent to gather his papers, fingers fumbling. Melissa just stared at me, tears brimming, her perfect mask shattered. I leaned closer, my words a whisper meant to sting. The next move isn't yours. It's mine. And for the first time, I saw it, not arrogance in their eyes, not smug superiority, but fear. Fear. That's what I saw in their eyes when the flash drive hit the table. But fear fades fast if you don't feed it. I intended to feed it until they choked. The next morning, I shaved clean, polished my shoes, and put on the old navy blue blazer I hadn't worn since Margaret's funeral. The weight of it on my shoulders was grounding, steadying. I wanted to look sharp, competent, undeniable. If Jason and Melissa were so desperate to paint me as senile, I'd make sure every step I took screamed the opposite. Downtown Dallas was buzzing with weekday noise, horns, distant sirens, the smell of roasted peanuts from a street cart mixing with exhaust. I walked into Crane and Amp, Whitmore, elder law specialists. Yes, Melissa's chosen attorney. Frank had fed me that name, and I wasn't about to let the opportunity slide. The receptionist looked up. "Do you have an appointment, sir?" "I do now," I said, my voice steady. "Tell Mr. Crane Bob Selvers is here. I believe my grandchildren have mentioned me." Her eyes flickered, the faintest recognition, before she buzzed him. A minute later, Crane appeared. Tall, thin, a suit too sharp for his age. His smile was practiced, oily. "Mr. Selvers." What a surprise. "Please come in." His office smelled of leather and money. I sat across from him, letting silence linger until he shifted in his chair. Finally, I set the flash drive on his mahogany desk. "Before you waste more of your time with my grandchildren's fairy tales, you'll want to hear what's on this." He raised an eyebrow. "They're only concerned about your well-being." I cut him off. "They're concerned about debt. Jason's drowning. Melissa hasn't worked in months. They want guardianship because they want control. And I have them on record, word for word." I watched the blood drain from his face as I leaned in. "Here's your choice. Withdraw quietly from the charade, or I take this evidence to the Bar Association and let them wonder why you were complicit in elder abuse." His smile twitched, broke. The shark had tasted blood his own. "I see," he said carefully. "Good. Then you also see me walking out that door, and you'll make sure your files on Bob Selvers vanish like they were never opened." I left him sitting there, pale and silent. On the street, the spring wind felt clean against my face. One front closed, another to open. Back home, I prepared the next strike. Jason's debts were the perfect lever. With Frank's help, I drafted anonymous letters, each one stuffed with photocopies of his unpaid balances and delinquent accounts. One to his employer, one to the mortgage company that already had him on thin ice, one to Melissa herself. Let them see the cracks in each other. Let them start to doubt. Before we continue, Please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. That evening, the first explosion came. Through my living room window, I saw Jason storm out of Melissa's car in front of my house. His tie was loose, his face red. Melissa followed, shouting, her phone clutched in her hand. "You told me you had this under control," she screamed. Jason whirled, veins bulging in his neck. "You said Crane was going to handle it. Now he won't even take our calls. And somebody mailed my boss my credit reports. I almost lost my job today, Melissa. They didn't realize I was sitting in the shadows, watching through lace curtains." The night air carried their words straight to me, each syllable a victory. Melissa shoved him, her voice cracking. "You've ruined everything. Do you know how much I've already spent on this case?" "On you." Jason threw his hands up. "Don't pin this on me." If Grandpa wasn't such a stubborn old, he stopped, glanced around, then lowered his voice. "We'll fix it. We have to. Just give me time." They stumbled back into the car, their argument muffled now. The taillights faded into the dark. I leaned back in my chair, the clock ticking steady above the fireplace. The war was no longer just me against them. It was them against each other. And that was exactly what I wanted. I'd fought enough battles to know when the enemy line was crumbling. Jason and Melissa weren't united anymore. They were unraveling. Each accusation, each slip of the tongue between them was another fracture in their alliance. I didn't need to push hard. Just a nudge here, a whisper there, and they'd destroy each other while I watched. The weekend was my opening. On Sunday morning, the air outside smelled of cut grass and distant barbecue smoke from the neighbors down the street. I was sipping my coffee when my daughter arrived, her car door slamming harder than usual. She carried grocery bags in each hand, dropped them onto the kitchen counter, and sighed. "Dad," she muttered, shaking her head. "I don't know what's happening anymore. Jason hasn't shown up to work in 2 days. Melissa keeps blowing up my phone about money. And now I'm hearing things." I didn't answer, just raised an eyebrow and sipped my coffee. People reveal more when you give them silence to fill. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Someone sent Jason's employer an envelope. Debt records, past due notices. They threatened to fire him unless he cleaned it up. And Melissa," she rubbed her temples. "Melissa's friends are saying she lied about her job. Crane dropped their case, and she refuses to tell me why." Her eyes searched mine, desperate for reassurance. I gave her none. Instead, I said, calm and even, "What's happening is simple. They showed their true colors, and now the rest of the world sees it too." She swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. She saw the truth even if she wasn't ready to admit it. When she left, I went to work. I dug out my old Rolodex, a relic from the days when numbers weren't stored on glowing screens, but written down, worn smooth from years of turning. My fingers landed on the card I wanted, Reverend Cole, the man who'd married Margaret and me 50 years ago. He still led the local congregation. In a neighborhood like ours, the church was the center of gravity, a place where whispers turned into wildfire. I dialed. His voice was warm, surprised. "Bob, it's been too long." "Evening, Reverend," I said. "I need a favor. Strictly confidential." By Tuesday, the wildfire had started. At Bible study, Melissa's name was on people's lips, talk of expensive handbags bought on no salary, whispers about dishonesty. By Wednesday, Jason's debts had slipped into the men's prayer group. "Poor kid," they said. "But a gambler's a gambler." That's all it took. Their reputations were bleeding out, drop by drop, and I didn't have to lift a finger. But I wasn't finished. That night, I went down to the basement. The air was cool, heavy with the smell of dust and time. Margaret's old filing cabinet sat against the wall, drawers stuffed with forgotten paper. I found the box I was half looking for family keepsakes. Old report cards, birthday cards in crayon, drawings Melissa once gave me when she was little. "Grandpa, you're my hero," scrawled in shaky handwriting. I stared at it for a long time. Then I slipped it into a fresh envelope. Inside that envelope, I also placed a copy of Melissa's recent bank statement. Frank had pulled it for me overdrafts, luxury purchases, red ink bleeding across the page. I mailed it to her apartment with no note, no explanation. Just the contrast between the girl she used to be and the woman she'd become. Frank called the next evening, amusement in his voice. "Bob, you're ruthless." "Not ruthless," I corrected. My tone was ice. Precise. By Thursday, their world cracked wide open. Jason showed up at my house first, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. His face was blotchy, tie loose, sweat shining at his temples. Melissa trailed behind, mascara streaked down her cheeks, her hair a tangled mess. They looked less like young adults and more like kids caught stealing. "You did this," Jason barked, his voice breaking on the edge of panic. He pointed at me like I was an intruder in my own house. "The letters. The gossip. My boss, he got my credit reports in the mail. He says if I miss one more payment, I'm gone. That was you." I didn't move from my armchair. The ticking of the grandfather clock filled the silence between us. "I don't need to ruin you, Jason," I said, voice cold as stone. "You're doing that well enough yourself." Melissa stepped forward, trembling. Her voice wasn't sharp this time. It was cracked, pleading. "Grandpa, please. People won't talk to me. My friends won't even answer my calls. Jason's boss is threatening to fire him. We can't keep living like this." I stood slowly. The floor creaked under my boots, each step heavy, deliberate. The room smelled faintly of lemon polish Melissa had cleaned earlier in the week to look useful. Now she stood there, unraveling, exposed. "You wanted guardianship," I said, my voice low, cutting. "You wanted to strip me of everything I earned, to put me away like broken furniture. And now?" I leaned closer, letting them see the fire in my eyes. "Now you're the ones in a cage, built by your own greed." Jason's mouth opened, but no words came out. Melissa's shoulders sagged, tears welling again. I straightened, towering over them in my own house. My words were a whisper, but they cut like glass. "And this is only the beginning." They left without another word. Through the front window, I watched them shuffle toward their car, beaten dogs in the glow of the porch light. Jason's shoulders hunched, Melissa's steps uneven. Their silhouettes shrank into the dark, bent under a weight they'd forged with their own hands. I turned back inside. The clock ticked steady, the house silent again. On the mantel, Margaret's photo caught a sliver of lamplight. Her eyes seemed softer now, as though she knew. Maybe proud, maybe just relieved. The war wasn't over, but the battlefield was mine. And I was only warming up. By the time spring rain swept across Dallas, I was ready to end this war. Jason and Melissa were bleeding out in whispers and overdue bills, but I wanted something permanent. Something written in ink and stamped with the weight of law. I called Frank on Monday. His office smelled of cigars and gun oil, same as always. He slid a manila folder across the desk toward me. "You're going to like this," he said, voice low. "Jason and Melissa aren't just broke. They're reckless. Missed loan payments, delinquent cards, even an attempt to take out a line of credit in your name last month." I opened the folder. Copies of applications, signatures, clumsy forgeries that made my jaw tighten. "They're not just greedy," I muttered. "They're criminals." Frank nodded. "All you need is to push this into the right hands. I know a detective who owes me a favor." That afternoon, I paid a visit to the Dallas County Courthouse. The building smelled of disinfectant and old paper, echoes of footsteps bouncing off marble floors. I handed the forged documents to a clerk. Calm. Professional. "These need to be reviewed for fraud," I said. My voice didn't shake. Her eyes widened as she glanced at the names. "Family?" she asked quietly. "Blood," I replied. "But not family." By Wednesday, the storm hit. Jason's car screeched to a stop in front of my house just after dusk. Headlights carved sharp lines through the rain. He burst inside without knocking, water dripping off his jacket. His face was pale, lips trembling with rage and panic. Melissa followed, clutching her phone like it was the only thing keeping her afloat. "You turned us in," Jason roared. His voice cracked against the old plaster walls. "Police came to my office today. They've got paperwork, my signature on loans I never took. They're calling it fraud." Melissa's mascara ran in black streaks down her cheeks. "Grandpa, please, tell them it's a mistake." They said these charges could ruin our lives. I stayed in my chair, the steady tick of the grandfather clock louder than their shouting. Mistake. My voice was low-cold. The mistake was thinking you could forge my name and walk away clean. Jason's fists clenched. His eyes darted toward the fireplace mantel where Margaret's folded flag sat in its glass case. He used to salute it when he was small. Now he looked at it like it mocked him. "You don't understand," he shouted. We had no choice. I rose slowly. The floorboards groaned under my boots. The smell of wet wool and rain filled the room. I leaned closer, close enough to see the desperation in their eyes. There's always a choice. You chose greed. Melissa's voice broke, soft and pleading. We were just trying to survive. You were trying to steal. I cut her off. From the man who carried this family for decades. From the house built with my hands. From the name you thought you could smear. Thunder cracked outside, rattling the windows. Jason flinched, but I didn't move. I warned you, I said, each word sharp as glass. You dig a grave for someone else, sooner or later, you're the one who falls in. Their silence was thick, broken only by the storm. They looked smaller now, shadows of the arrogant pair who once whispered about locking me away. Get out, I said finally. My voice was iron. Go face the mess you made. The law won't be as patient as I was. They staggered toward the door, broken, whispering to each other in panic. Rain swallowed their figures as they disappeared into the night. I closed the door, bolted it, and turned back to the silent house. Margaret's photo on the mantel seemed to watch me, her smile faint in the dim light. I poured a glass of water, steady hands, steady heart. The battlefield was mine. But the final blow was still waiting. The storm passed overnight, but for Jason and Melissa, the real one was just beginning. By Friday morning, the Dallas County Sheriff's cruiser rolled up to their apartment. I wasn't there, but Frank was. He called me later, voice steady, almost impressed. They didn't even fight it. Jason tried to bluff, said it was all a mistake, but the detectives had your recordings, the bank files, the forged signatures. Melissa just cried. They're both being charged with fraud. Guardianship case? Dead in the water. I sat in my kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee mixing with the faint polish of old wood. Sunlight streamed across the floor, lighting up the same boards Jason once crawled on as a toddler. Funny how life circles back, only this time, he wasn't crawling toward me. He was crawling into the system he thought he could manipulate. That afternoon, my daughter came. Her eyes were red, hands shaking. She set her purse on the counter like it weighed 100 pounds. Dad, I don't understand. My kids, how could they do this? I met her gaze. Because they thought kindness was weakness. Because they thought your father was too old to fight back. She covered her mouth, tears slipping through her fingers. What's going to happen to them? I looked out the window at the garden Margaret once tended, the smell of damp earth drifting in through the screen. My voice was quiet, sharp as the edge of a blade. What always happens to traitors? They pay. Silence filled the kitchen. Only the grandfather clock ticked, steady, relentless. That night, I walked through my house alone. The flag on the mantel, Margaret's picture in the hallway, the worn leather recliner by the window, every inch of it felt by sacrifice, mine and hers. And I had defended it one last time. Outside, the neighborhood was calm. No more whispers, no more shadows on the porch. Just the clean silence of a man who'd finished what needed finishing. I turned off the lights, sat in the dark, and let the quiet settle. The war was over, and I'd won. They buried me too soon, but I made sure they stayed in the ground.